Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Engineering Workflows in Linear. We're happy to have you here. To introduce myself, my name is Lena Vu Sawyer. I lead community here at Linear. And I'm joined today by two incredible engineers. We have Kristin Boyer joining us. She's a product engineer here at Linear. And Mike Hadley is the lead product engineer at Replit. And if you're not familiar with Replit, it is a browser-based software development platform that has a lot of AI capabilities. Definitely try it out. Uh-oh, still echoing. Okay, we're going to work on this. And in the chat, you'll see Mafiz. Mafiz, go ahead and say hello. Mafiz is an engineer who has actually worked on our Git integration. So a little bit of what you can expect today. I have some questions for Mike and Kristin about how they manage engineering workflows on Linear. They have their own tips, their own workflows for how their individual teams work. First of all, Kristin and Mike, can you tell us in one sentence where Linear fits into your engineering workflows?
Sure. So for me, it is my source of truth and bridge between all of the different teams who are interested in the product development that we do.
Great answer. And truly one sentence. I usually expect at least a little bit of runoff. Mike, go ahead. How about you?
All right, I'm checking mine, trying to make it one sentence. We use it for tracking source of truth for pieces of work, coordinating them into larger projects, roadmaps, timelines, and then communicating out statuses on those projects.
So that was in very, very brief, but we'll dive into these things a bit more in depth. And I'm actually going to put Mike on the spot for this one. You are working on developer tools all day. You are an engineer. So I am going to ask you to give us some behind the scenes of how Replit has set up your workflow on Linear. Maybe even share your screen so we can see how you've set it up.
Sure, yeah. I have a demo Linear team here, and I have a repository here. And I can walk through a quick demo of how we create Linear tickets and link them to GitHub PRs. So our process sometimes, most of the time, but not all the time, looks like we end up creating a ticket in Linear to capture the work that we want to do. So someone will fill this out and describe some feature that needs to be built. We'll put that into a to-do or triage location. We will describe that feature, and that feature might have some more information. It might have a priority, labels, milestones in a project, all of that. And we try and get this described, and then it gets handed off to an engineer to implement. So I'll go ahead and assign this to myself, and I'm going to work on it in this repository. So I have this repository pulled down here. It doesn't actually have any code in it, but I will just make something up here. Pretend that I implemented the feature. And in my terminal here, I'm just using a command line tool to create a branch and commit my changes. And there's a number of ways that we can link this chunk of work with our ticket. And one of them is to put the ticket name in the branch. My ticket is TST7, so I might say TST7 in my branch name. And then I'm going to go ahead and commit all of those changes and submit them to GitHub. And let's call this new feature. And you could do this however you want. It doesn't matter that I'm using Graphite here. That PR is created. And if we look at Linear over here, the branch name has linked this PR with this ticket. So you can see that the feature is opened. If I change the status of this PR, that'll get updated here. And you can configure how status updates in GitHub flow to status updates in Linear. For Replit, we have a pretty simple configuration where PR is opened, means that the ticket gets linked here and marked as in progress. And then when we merge this PR, this will get closed. So that's one way to link the tickets. The other way that we tend to link tickets is by putting the name of the ticket and using magic words. So I can say part of TST7 here in the name, and in linear that will get updated to non-closing here, which means that when this merges, this ticket doesn't get marked as complete, doesn't get marked as done. Or you can use a magic word and say, hey, this isn't part of, it closes TST7. And then this should flip back to a closing link.
Kristin, you might even be able to offer a different perspective on how we do this at linear, if it maybe looks a little bit different at linear, or if we use those same stages.
Yeah, one of the things that I think Mike's team will experience as well is that when you add reviewers to your code, as they're reviewing, it changes the status to in review too. You don't have to go back to linear and map everything that's happening in GitHub. If somebody is following along and doesn't maybe have a login to your organization's GitHub account, they can still be totally up to date. And then if you move it back to draft, let's say, like it'll change the status back too. So it's really keeping an eye on everything that's happening within the PR.
Mahmoud asks, are magic keywords like closing built into the linear GitHub integration? Mike, did you have to set those up yourself, or are they built in?
Yeah, we enabled for our Replit organization the linear integration, which has the ability to turn on the magic keywords. And so we set that up initially, and then we don't have to worry about it.
Thank you so much. It sounds like magic words are an underrated feature. So I hope everyone tries them out and gets to get a bit more use out of them. Kristin, did you have anything else to add about how we, like the basic kind of Git integration and statuses on the linear side, or did Mike cover all of it?
The statuses are pretty similar for us. I think one area would be how you could potentially have intake happening from issues maybe that folks on the public side are creating for you on GitHub. I know that there's a lot of teams that do that. I can show that at whenever you'd like me to.
Why don't we do it right now while we're doing
Perfect.
the overview?
Okay, great. So let's say that we have a public facing repository potentially that's managing our API or something else that folks are using. If we create an issue on this side, and we have the integration all set up, we'll start to see that the issues will be linked and can come in through linear when we have this integration all set up. So linear mentioned that it's created an issue for us. In your teams, you can also set up triage. So any new issues that come in are put within triage, and we have a goalie rotation who is responsible for reviewing these issues that come up. So you can see the one that I just created is right here. And we can see that it's all connected to GitHub. Any comments that I leave here will be posted back to GitHub within just this thread. And then any of the changes that I make, so maybe I want to tag this, we have a specific way we want folks to create issues with a specific format. We can maybe edit those and it'll all get sent back to the GitHub side. And then what we usually do is when issues are in triage, we accept them and you can assign them to somebody who you might know is working on it. I can assign this to Sarah here, depending on priority. Let's say this one is high priority. We can say where in the process this is. Maybe I talked to her and it's already in progress. I can set that up for her here. And then once I accept it, it goes into her issues. And I can move on to the next one here. You can see one of my favorite things as a newer member of the linear team is that you can see the history of similar issues. So this gives me a lot of context into how someone might have investigated this previously or how they might have solved a similar problem. So I use this portion a lot.
Now that we have a sense of like how you might be able to set up your workflows, your Git integrations on linear and manage the life cycle of an issue across these multiple platforms, I want to dive into what the day-to-day looks like and how you work internally and then externally with this tool. Mike, we used to talk a lot about developer productivity at Replit, and one of the biggest things I'm sure many people in this event can relate to is that context switching is so frustrating. Having multiple windows open, maybe having to port updates between Notion or Google Docs or wherever you're working so that you know all of your stakeholders are aligned. And I'm curious how you've seen this integration contributing to your own developer productivity. And second part, if there's any tips that you have for other engineers to help improve their productivity.
For the first one, definitely the automations provided with GitHub and Slack have been incredibly helpful. So we often use the Slack one to triage issues into our linear board for a particular project, which is really awesome because it syncs the context. If people are commenting on the linear ticket, those comments show up in Slack. And if they're like emoji reacting, they also show up in both places. So it helps keep our knowledge in sync across the two and create visibility for, say, support who created a ticket. They can see when it's closed via the Slack integration. And the GitHub integration reduces the burden for us. Once we've gotten all the work into linear, the engineers just need to know like which ticket they're working on. The magic words help us link them all together. So all the context is on every PR and you don't really have to switch context back to linear when you're in execution mode.
Now, Kristin, are there any other developer productivity tips or features that you've particularly enjoyed using?
Yeah, I think that mine honestly is the inbox, having everything centrally located there so that any comments or document mentions or updates to any of the issues I'm working on, especially with the app, like I look through that, all my notifications there. And then I would also plus one the Slack integration that, I mean, it's huge. It meets me wherever I'm at. So if I'm in linear and I'm working on something, it's there. If I'm within Slack talking to somebody about something else, I can just handle it there. And I don't have to worry about trying to close the loop on all these different conversations I'm having. It just happens.
Yeah, that's Slack integration. Very helpful. So we've covered when you're working with your team in linear, they're going to be getting all those updates right from the issue. When you're working with people outside of Eng, do you have any advice for looping them in?
I think like when I'm working with folks from lots of different teams, I try to make sure I send the link to linear because I know that that's the central location and it's equally accessible to everyone on our team. To your point, like I try not to send the GitHub link sometimes because I don't know who has access to it or who's comfortable using it. And so linear is helpful there.
Yeah, I love that. And I personally loved as someone on like marketing, and I still love this, that I can always check in on linear and I know exactly what's going on without necessarily having to get into GitHub. Mike, anything to add there?
I guess another thing we use is the project updates. And we have those piped to Slack and we have them set to different channels. So for folks that aren't in the linear, like on the ground, looking at tickets flying in and out, we have a habit of for every project doing a weekly update on Friday that then gets blasted out to Slack. So there's like this summary pulse for every project of where it's at, what is the last chunk of work that was done, what's the next thing coming.
When we're talking about working with potentially new UX that we're delivering, as well as working with designers and integrating resources that are living outside of linear, there's two areas that I think are interesting here. So when we have issues, our designers will often link Figma into there, and I don't even have to open Figma. I can just open the preview directly in linear, and that helps a lot, especially when we're having active conversation in linear about some designs. The second is preview links. So if you have tools like Versal or Netlify that create preview links based off of a pull request, you can view those within linear as well. And so that means that if you're working with PMs or designers on a feature, you don't have to spin up or send them to those external tools within, say, your PR. Like you can just tell them to keep an eye out for it within the linear issue, and they can click on the link and open it straight from there, review everything, make sure it looks and feels and behaves as expected, and provide any feedback right within linear.
Any advice on how to hand off projects between teams on the same project? So for example, let's say you're going from design is ready and they're ready to move the project over to engineering or something like that. How do you all handle those?
Well, one of the ways that we do it is by changing some of the labels. And you can, like Lena said earlier, you can have custom like workflow statuses. So maybe one of your phases is that design needs to go through something that has some product context, but doesn't yet have full designs yet. And then moving between different statuses can help do the handoff between different teammates.
Yeah, we use the blocking issue feature too at times. So it's like, here's the design ticket and here's the engineering ticket. And we'll mark the engineering ticket as blocked by the design ticket. And then that status update that you're mentioning is nice because it like flows through and then we know engineering is unblocked.
So we talked about project updates. That's like internal updates, right? Someone else asked about how we coordinate release notes. So as you are giving updates on a project to external stakeholders, customers, how do you manage that? Or maybe how do you even manage a change log, for example, in linear?
What our team does is we have a GitHub pull request template with, the different change log areas that you can be contributing to. So maybe it's like a major feature or a bug fix or an improvement, something like that. If you feel like it's something that you want people to know about in the change log, you can write your update into there. And then our team's easily able to collate all those and make sure that they are then draft them into the changelog format. But that's how we make sure that all the changes that people need to know about are referenced.
So that's all the basics from Mike and Kristin. Now there's some really great questions in the chat. And so I'm going to jump into those now. Let's see what Mafiz has curated for us over here. Ariane asks, how many workspaces, teams, project milestones are there? Like, is it 5 to 10 teams, hundreds of projects, or just a few projects open at a time?
At Replit, we tend to use the initiatives feature to group the things that we're actively working on. So we have many teams and each team has many projects, but only a few of those are active at any point and put into an initiative to say like, this is actually what we're focusing on at this point in time.
Yeah, this is going to really vary by your organization and your team. There's so much flexibility. We generally recommend keeping it simple at first. No need to create a ton of teams to start, but to try and grow it organically. Okay, and then Dimitri has some questions about documentation. How do we document new features or how we're building?
Yeah, I usually focus all of my docs and documentation within the linked docs at the top of a project, just to keep everything co-located. And again, you can link to issues or projects or other documents, and then those will be formatted and displayed with their titles. And so that helps a lot. Again, it's like keeping everything in the same ecosystem so that, let's say you are linking it out in an external doc and then something changes, the links aren't dead then. Everything stays updated.
Mike, anything else? How you all do it?
We have different sources of truth that like each team uses. So engineering, the pull requests and commit history are like the ultimate source of truth, and the designers, Figma is usually the source of truth. And then status updates, linear, and work tracking linear is the source of truth. So one practice that I like is we try and link all of those. So you're like working on a pull request, have a little template that you're using as you're working on the issue that you can paste in the linear ticket, or that comes from the magic words, but you can paste in the Figma, you can paste in your design doc, and then have a way to get to everything. And linear is nice because if you can link all of those to your linear ticket, then those kind of come for free every time you link your linear issue.
Last question, do you use project descriptions in the early phase of an idea to sketch it out, or is that done externally? And then do you use project milestones, and what kind of milestones? Kristin, I know you already have a project overview pulled up. Do you want to give a demo on that there?
Sure. So actually, this is a very timely question because I was just working today with somebody on a project that we're going to start, and we were creating the project, and the person was outlining their thoughts of where they might see the project going or the different requirements. So to your question about how outlining the early stages, I think you're spot on. You can create milestones as well as if you know it's going to be a longer term project. They are completely custom, whatever you want them to be. So maybe you have alpha, beta, GA, or internal different points of release in your project lifecycle. That's all up to you.
So Joe asked how we split up our teams on Linear. Do we just split by engineering, design? I can give a formal response, and then Kristin, Mike, you can tell me what it's like on the day-to-day. So our recommendation is you can organize it to reflect your org chart. So that would be engineering, design, product, etc. You can also organize it based on teams who work together often. For example, I have like an events team, and that's going to have people who are across marketing, maybe in customer success. That has a lot of different stakeholders. And then the last way is teams who work on the same timelines, because cycles are set on the team level. Mike, did you want to share how Replit set it up?
We've tried a few different ways as we've ironed out what works well for us. And I think we generally landed on it's closer to our org chart than anything else. And then we can arbitrarily pick when a project is tied to multiple teams. Like we'll just put it in one and everyone is working in that project anyway.
I want to give a major shout out. Thank you, Mike and Kristin, for sharing your time, sharing so many details of how you work with us. I think you all are experts on this. Glad to have your expert opinion. If you are looking for a more basic overview of Linear, if you want to know what we're talking about when we say teams or issues or cycles, and that's the level that you want to know about right now, you are very welcome to sign up for one of our onboarding workshops. I do these every week. And that'll be for anyone who isn't super familiar with Linear just yet. Thank you so much, Mike, Kristin, Mafiz, and everyone who joined us. We will see you on Slack or at a future event. Have a great day, everyone.